I want to talk about the fact that just because feminists occasionally say something stupid, it doesn't mean that doesn't mean you can't be skeptical. For instance, there are several atheists who might say something stupid, but it doesn't mean that atheism is incompatible with skepticism. And I think Bill Maher is a great example, because he's an enormous douche, and one who is in fact very harmful to women and children. Because he's very much against science-based medicine, he's against vaccinations, and also even in his atheism, or I should say so-called atheism, because sometimes he'll say he's not an atheist, sometimes he says he is. You know, he came out with the movie Religulous, or Religulous, whatever, which actually used the same tactics that a lot of atheists criticized with Ben Stein's movie Expelled, where he took a lot of comments out of context, he did a lot of heavy editing to show that religious people are idiots. So there's really no skepticism with Bill Maher, even though he's an atheist. Does that mean that atheism is incompatible with skepticism? No, not at all. It's atheism that gets better when you apply skepticism. And it's the same thing with feminism. It can lack skepticism, but it's so much better with it. Without it, just like atheism, it's just another blind faith. And that's why I want to encourage you to combine the two. And I think that's where both feminists and skeptics can grow and learn. And that brings me up to the third point, which is the idea that feminism is obsolete. This came about, I didn't think that anyone actually thought this until I was on a podcast, and the host was a guy who said, you know, do you consider yourself a feminist? And I said, well, yeah, I do. And he said, but, I mean, you guys got the right to vote, right? I said, yeah. And he said, well, what else do you want? Nah, nothing. That's cool. Just the vote. But the thing is, there are a ton of other issues that unfortunately still need to be addressed. And feminists are out there doing it. And a lot of the work they're doing is very skeptical. But I feel that skeptics in general don't really notice. Because they're just not, they're not in the mainstream amongst the skeptic blogs and the skeptic magazines, unfortunately. But I think those things are starting to turn around. So I want to talk about a few, and I'm going to go back to the breast screening, the breast cancer screening one is a good example. I told you about what was wrong about the feminist reaction to the breast cancer screening recommendations, but there was something that was right. While some of the blogs were freaking out over the wrong things, there were other people who were picking up the torch and realizing that there actually was a problem, a legitimate problem with the new recommendations. And that problem is that when the panel looked at the average woman, they saw a white woman. The problem is that black women get breast cancer at twice the rate of white women between the ages of 20 and 40. So it's critically important for them to get screened earlier. And in fact, the breast cancer that they get tends to be much more aggressive than the breast cancer that women get. Biologically, it's different. It doesn't respond the same way to treatment, and after chemo, even if it goes away, it's much more likely to come back in a much more aggressive way. So this panel completely failed to look at the problems of black women.